Hi, I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert. As always, I'm joined by producer Mike behind the scenes and my co-host Janet. Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Last podcast, we talked about the very serious subject of cancer and cancer in America and broke it down between men and women, that prostate and breast cancer is the number one, lung cancer being number two. And while we were talking about lung cancer, we both discovered family members that died from lung cancer who had never even smoked cigarettes. And today I want to, in part two on cancer, touch in on, we started talking about how it's a metabolic disease. And I wanted to pull up that the third most cancer is the same in men and women, and that happens to be colon cancer. So I would love for you to tie into nutrition, what supplements do we need, prevention, if we do have cancer and we're on radiation or chemo, what can we do to have a better quality of life? Just throwing this topic at you.
So we're going to need a part three already, I can tell. It's a lot, right?
And it's so serious, and everybody's everybody knows someone.
Well, again, Janet, when you're talking about the number two killer in America, and it's neck and neck with heart disease for number one, it's a serious condition. And if anybody has been through, and almost every family has, like you said in the last podcast,
1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women.
If anybody has been through what you and I have been through with family members, you know how tragic it is and what a real burden it is on everybody in the family. So I take this serious, and I hope people will take this serious and try to implement some small changes that maybe they can make to reduce the risk. We're never going to wipe it out, but we can reduce the risk of being one of those diagnoses, right? One of those 1 in 2 men or 1 in 3, which is approaching 1 in 2 women.
Do you think everyone, if they live long enough, will get cancer?
If you look at the statistics, men with their prostate probably will. The majority of men, not everyone, but the majority of men will. The good news is that the majority of those men will die with the prostate cancer and not from the prostate cancer, is exactly what the research shows. So typically, unless that prostate cancer spreads and gets, say, to the lungs or to the bones, then there is not an issue. Not that it's not an issue, but it's not an issue that's going to threaten their life or end their life prematurely. So, yeah, for unfortunately for us men, there's a very high risk of prostate cancer cells at some point in our lifetime.
So we talked about prevention and screening, and since colon cancer is the third one, what is it, at age 50, they recommend everyone gets colonoscopy. What do you think?
Well,
I know they have those ones where you can do your own screening at home rather than going in to get the colonoscopy.
Yeah, that's a newer thing that has come out maybe in the last, 8 or 10 years. Janet, I am probably not the right person to ask. I am very hesitant to do anything that the medical community recommends. I have never had a colonoscopy. I can't see a reason that I ever would. Now, I guess if somebody were having serious issues, it would then maybe make a lot more sense. There is like a 1% chance of a perforated colon when they do a colonoscopy. Now, that's small, but still 1 out of 100. And that can lead to some serious, problems and death.
What about false positives?
There's false positives to it. It can miss up to 6% of cancers if you look at the research, the colonoscopy. I'm not sure about the home test. Don't have much experience with that. There are some studies, articles written that say, you shouldn't do it. But again, the standard medical care says you should. So I tell everybody, be the CEO. I choose to do things that I think greatly reduce my risk. And
that would be
unless
your diet.
I'm having an issue, I would never, go and have the test.
But who's not having a stomach issue these days? Almost everyone
Well,
has gut problems, or they're bloated, or
I can tell you
constipated.
who's not, Janet. The
Okay.
people who are taking the foundational 4 supplements,
Okay.
right?
Good
Because
answer.
the gut issues come
Yeah.
from the probiotic
Yeah.
lack and the digestive enzyme lack, almost exclusively from those two things. And so,
So you basically have as much of this cancer prevention built into your supplements.
well, there's a reason for
And
the foundational
lifestyle.
4. We're
Yeah.
trying to prevent all the big killers in
Yeah.
America, and we're trying to help people feel better at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So those people are typically not having the stomach issues. The problem is it's a very small percentage of people willing to do it.
Now, with the stomach issues, brings me back around to seed oils.
Yes. So think about it. You know, you talked about colon cancer, and colon cancer is being found in younger and younger people at a higher rate today. And why is that?
Processed foods.
Because processed foods are introduced almost immediately, you know, into their life. They're probably overweight, right? So they have
Yeah.
inflammatory processes going on. They have that visceral fat that you and I have talked about so much, that dangerous fat that's producing inflammatory cytokines, producing reactive oxygen species.
You need to come in and get on the in body and see what your visceral fat is.
So it is a lot of lifestyle. They have poor vitamin D levels.
Don't
They
get out
don't
in
get
the
out in the
sun.
sun. They don't exercise as much as we don't exercise as much as we used to as a society, as a country. They don't sleep. They're under stress. They have a cell phone in their pocket all the time. They sleep with it beside their bed. I mean, you
Radiation,
get it. They're
Wi-Fi.
it's just a different world
Today.
Their hormones are tanked.
Yeah.
They have all these endocrine disrupting hormones that we've talked about, or
Plastics.
endocrine disrupting chemicals that we've talked about, the plastics, the atrazine, the
Atrazine.
glyphosate that's sprayed on our foods. I mean, the deck is stacked against us. The good news is there are answers to try to overcome or minimize the deck that we're dealt. And so that's what we're trying to do, is take what we have available to us and say, okay, here's what the research says. Here's what experience says. Here's what years of doing this says. Here's what Dr. Blaylock says. Here's what Thomas Seyfried says. You put all that together, which is what I've tried to do, and say, okay, here's a strategy to make my risk of having prostate cancer as a man, of having lung cancer as a man, of having colon cancer as a man, of you or Beth having breast cancer or lung cancer or colon cancer as a woman, and say, how do we reduce the risk tremendously? The easy answer is take the right supplements. I mean, and when I say take
eat
the right,
the right
supplements,
food.
take the world's best supplements. Janet, getting people to eat the right food is critical, but it is harder to do that than it is to get them to open a bottle and take supplements.
True. And I remember sitting in your first class, we did a huge cancer class, and I did have that wake up aha moment of, I want to do everything I can to prevent this.
Yep.
And that did help me. Easy taking the supplements, but that did help me to begin to change the way I looked at food. And it was hard in the beginning until I started feeling so much better.
Yep.
Once the ball starts rolling and you feel great, you have more energy. And if it's a metabolic disease, then, just having more energy is going to help.
And,
right?
and Janet, and that's why I go back to the foundational 4, the OptiU foundational 4, because think about the reason that I developed those and formulated those. To keep the energy in the system up, to give the body all the nutrients it needs so that the immune system can work. So that's what the the magnesium, the digestive enzyme, and the probiotic do. Now, you talk about colon cancer. Well, the digestive enzyme and the probiotic are going to go a long way in reducing the risk for that. And those are simple things that even if you're eating McDonald's 3 times a day, you can open up the bottle and take the supplements.
And it's going to help people that are just constipated or have diarrhea or any kind of bloat.
Reflux, people who are on Nexium.
Yes.
People, we know how dangerous these drugs are over time. Nexium,
I think that can create cancer over time.
omeprazole, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it can create heart and kidney disease, bone loss. So one really simple thing is let's do a regimen of the foundational 4 and let's add vitamin D. I'm going to tell you why you should add the Prescriptions Plus vitamin D with Super K is my personal recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin D is known and shown in the studies to treat and prevent at least 26 different cancers.
Wow, that's like putting on your Superman cape.
I want everybody to hear me on this.
Yep.
Vitamin D D3, not D2 that the doctors can prescribe.
D3.
Vitamin D3 is shown to treat and prevent up to at least 26 types of cancer.
That's amazing.
Now, when you think about that, Janet, and you look at some of the stuff that these researchers have shown, they say that they believe that 50% of all cancers could be eliminated or prevented is the word I should use, prevented by having optimal vitamin D levels. Now, here's the tragedy, Janet.
Wow.
I know physicians and physicians' offices who don't check vitamin D's in people and never talk to them about
And when
it.
they do,
Even when they do have
what's
cancer.
the optimal level of our vitamin
So
D?
here we go with
According to the doctor, according to
here we go
the-
with how the labs
the
are
science.
so skewed.
Okay.
Okay. So normal in America is based on averages. The average, most labs will show 30 to 100 nanograms per milliliter as the normal vitamin D level.
32.
Some go to 22 and a half, I believe it is. So if you're at 31, they'll go, oh, your vitamin D's perfect. You're there.
So
You're-
that's
you're
the
normal.
reference level if you're looking at your blood labs. That'll
Right.
say the reference level between
Yeah.
22 and 100.
Yeah. So we don't want to be average. We don't want to be normal. We want to be optimal. Optimal is a minimum of 60.
Okay.
That's where you really start to see the cancer risk, breast cancer risk, prostate cancer risk decline.
So get your
I
vitamin
like-
D level up to 60.
Well, I like 80 to 100.
Yeah.
Okay. And for most adults with 1 vitamin D or 2 vitamin D with Super K a day, they will get there. Now, why do I say
when-
1 or 2? Because you might absorb it
differently.
different than I do. Beth
And-
may absorb it differently than Don does.
And you should take it with food.
Absolutely. Vitamin D should be with your evening meal. It's a fat-soluble vitamin and it needs food. So a strategy that every American could do, and this includes kids, okay, is they could use the foundational 4 supplements, the OptiU multivitamin, the OptiU magnesium, the OptiU digestive enzyme, the OptiU probiotic, and then my other line of supplements, the prescriptions plus vitamin D with Super K. I literally believe that not only could we wipe out a massive number of cancers, but we would wipe out a massive number of heart disease. We would wipe out a lot of tired, don't sleep, people that need things that people need drugs for.
So
would be
look at
wiped
the
out.
big picture.
We would wipe
because-
out all Nexiums and all those drugs. They would not be necessary.
Well, but the first thing people say is, oh, but I don't want to spend my money on supplements, but they're not looking at the big picture of the money that all the other stuff cost.
Well, they're not looking at the ramifications
Yeah.
of the health consequences of these drugs with 398 side effects on average. And we're not even talking about chemo and radiation. 398 doesn't even flip the switch for what those side effects are like.
And so if you are someone on chemo and radiation, what do you recommend they do?
Well, I'll go back to my studies with the A4M and Dr. Blaylock that I talked about in the last podcast. So Dr. Blaylock shows over and over and over through his own studies and through other studies that he's pulled that nutritionally sound cancer patients, whether they take treatments or not, have better outcomes, period. They have less side effects and they have a better chance of being healed or cured, we'll call it, from the cancer. So he shows that the more nutrients the person puts in, the better their outcome. And so he talks about things that, of course, increase metabolism. He talks about whey protein because a lot of cancer patients die from sarcopenia.
They've lost too much muscle.
Lost their muscle. They waste away. They literally waste away because the chemo and radiation make it very hard for them to get in food or drink, right? That maybe they're
or to exercise.
they're just nauseous.
Yeah.
Or they are having I know a lot of folks who have radiation and on their necks and jaws, and they just can't, it makes it really, really hard for them to eat and to swallow. So the answer to that is, Janet, a big long list of supplements at very high doses, because chemo and radiation are depleting a ton of nutrients. And then they're probably, again, not eating well. So they need those 5 plus
they need even
a
more.
whole lot more.
Okay.
We We would try to get them to add N-acetylcysteine and glutathione and alpha-lipoic acid, and I
Things
have
to help
all
their
these
liver.
products that I formulated. But we want to try to keep their liver from being damaged by the chemo. We want to try to keep their lungs from being damaged by the chemo. We want to increase their glutathione because that's our master antioxidant. We want to give them vitamin D. We want to give them Inflazyme or Inflamma-Ease because we want to keep their inflammation down. We want them to drink the whey shake multiple times a day if we can get them to do it. So it is a big, long list. I do a lot of cancer consults.
I was getting ready to say, do you work with a lot of people with
of cancer patients. I have actually a cancer clinic who cannot be named because they will all be fired, a group of doctors, oncologists, who send all their patients to me and tell them basically don't listen to what the nutritionist tells you to do. They have to send them to the nutritionist there at their clinic. It's through the hospital system. And then they say, but go see my friend Billy and listen to what he says down at the pharmacy. Because here's what the advice they get, Janet, and this is tragic advice from these nutritionists or these dietitians. Drink Ensure or a similar product.
Isn't that sugar?
Wait a minute. It gets worse.
And seed oils.
It's not just sugar.
It's seed oils.
It's seed oils with sugar. So think about the very top two things that drive the cancer.
They're telling you to take more of.
They're telling you to drink it. Drink Ensure. Eat whatever you want. Drink your Diet Coke they give them diet drinks, which we know leads to cancer. These artificial sweeteners. They give them Little Debbie cakes and things because they want them to be, quote, comfortable while they're taking their chemo. So they sit there taking their chemo drip for hours with Cokes and crackers and cakes and donuts and cookies. The very things that are full of seed oils and sugars and white flours, running their insulin up, causing more metabolic disease, depleting more nutrients. Every time we eat sugar, especially, our body has to use up vitamins and minerals to metabolize that sugar. So it's Janet, it is 100% backwards.
But where is the disconnect? Is it because the medical doctors are studying, how to treat something, but not studying or connecting the sources of it, and they don't know as much about nutrition? I mean, why don't doctors learn about nutrition?
Because the drug companies don't pay for nutrition treatments, nutrition
to be
in school.
To be part of
it's that simple. It's all sponsored by drug companies, and they're not going to pay for. And even the stuff that the dietitians and the nutritionists learn is paid for by the food companies, and that's why they tell them to drink Ensure and Diet Coke and have all the sugar.
So if someone's just graduated from university and they've got their degree in nutrition or they're a dietitian, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've learned the right thing.
I'm going to tell you, in almost all cases, in my experience, they've learned the exact opposite of the right
And I'm
thing.
seeing that online every day with people who are training other people and trying to guide them how to lose weight.
Yeah.
They know nothing about hormones. They only know what they learned at their university.
Right.
And it is backwards.
Well,
I get so frustrated.
So nutrients through supplements, through whey protein, quality nutrients through supplements and through quality whey protein.
Type of protein, right type of nutrients.
Very important for these cancer patients. And one of those big ones we've talked about is vitamin D. Now, you talked a lot about food. And I would love to think that I could get people to change their food quickly, but it is very difficult. The supplements should be easy outside of some cost to take supplements. And what we have a lot of cancer patients do, because they are using so many, is they empty the contents of my capsules into their whey shake, and they don't even have to swallow a capsule. And it makes it right in their whey shake.
Makes it so easy.
Makes it easy.
When the thing that keeps coming up for me also, not just food, but what about alcohol?
Yeah, well, okay. So alcohol, in my opinion, should never be used, for health reasons. But a cancer patient, especially, because alcohol requires the body to utilize glutathione,
the master antioxidant,
to get rid of the poison. The alcohol is poison, folks. It is poison. Any way you want to phrase it, that's what it is. And so the body has to use our glutathione pools, our master antioxidant, to metabolize the alcohol and get it out of the system so it doesn't kill us.
Rather than helping you fight
the cancer. And so glutathione would then be used for other things like fighting cancer cells. So we're depleting one of our major sources, which is why I talk about whey protein, N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, all things that help the body make more glutathione. So if we can get them to, though, we want to cut out, obviously, all seed oils out of their diet immediately. We want to cut out as much sugar and sugar responders as we can.
Well, tell the difference between sugar and sugar responders.
Okay, well, let's talk about why we want to do this. Because Seyfried shows that it is a metabolic disease, and the higher your insulin and the higher your blood sugar, the higher your growth of your cancer, which is, we talked about what a PET scan is. It's a sugar to light the cancer up. So we want to do that. Now, the difference...
So the sugar's feeding your cancer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The sugar is feeding the cancer growth, 100%. It's feeding the cancer formation. It's feeding all these things. So sugar, the difference between sugar and sugar responders, I think the easiest way to explain this would be, we know that sugar out of a sugar container or bag or shaker is sugar. Everybody gets that. We know that's going to run our sugar and our insulin up. What people don't understand is a sugar responder would be something like a piece of bread.
Pasta,
rice, potatoes, even more unobvious, not obvious to people. I'm not sure if unobvious is a word. I'll get scolded by somebody. Honey. Some of those things are sugar responders. That doesn't mean you should never have them. It means you should be very conscious of when metabolic disease is the cause of this. 88 to 94% of Americans in the studies have metabolic disease. It's because of the sugars and the lack of nutrients through supplements that they're not getting to utilize these sugars. So these are really critical things for people to understand, not that have cancer only, but that don't want to have prevention. Cancer.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that you're getting your quality supplements. We want to make sure you're trying to eat what I like to call an insulin-controlled life.
I feel like it's like an armor.
Your sugar and insulin up.
I feel like it's my Superman cape, where it's like an armor to try to prevent these things, because so much stuff is coming at us that maybe used to not be out there with the toxins, the chemicals.
Well, it is. I mean, we're bombarded, like we said.
In the water, it's everywhere.
Well, and that brings me to the next thing. We need to have these folks drinking Kangen water. Cancer loves acidity. Mm-hmm. Okay, it loves sugar, it loves acidity, and it loves no oxygen. So we need to think of ways that we don't create a lot of sugar. It loves inflammation, so we don't have the seed oils. It loves no oxygen, so we try to make sure that we're getting out in the sun, that we're deep breathing, we're doing the yoga, we're exercising, we're walking, we're doing things to do that. Cancer also hates heat. So sauna treatment, hot baths, hot showers, warming the core temperature up, again, exercise in the sun. There are all these little strategies that can not only help the body fight cancer, but reduce the risk of us being diagnosed with cancer.
Because once you have the cancer, you maybe don't even feel like doing some of that stuff. It's that
going to be harder. Very difficult if you're taking chemo and radiation, especially if you're not taking a lot of nutrients that we recommend. Yeah, because it just destroys the body. Think about it, Janet. You mentioned this when we were getting ready to start about why people lose their hair.
Yeah, why do
they get so
hair?
Nauseous?
Yeah.
Well, the fastest dividing cells in our body are in the gut, and some of the fastest dividing are on our scalp. So when you I want you to think of this like chemo is like a carpet bombing in a war situation. Mm-hmm. We go in and we say we're going to carpet bomb the cells. It doesn't distinguish whether they're healthy cells or unhealthy cells. It just kills cells. The first cells to be killed are your gut cells and then your hair cells. And so that's why so many people get the nausea and they get the hair loss. So I think that chemo is, and I hate to express it this way because I know there are people out there taking it or considering it or have family members, but it's like, let's kill everything and hope some of the good cells survive. That's really the philosophy. I mean, chemo is based off mustard gas. And it's tragic because it's really since the 70s, the rates of the way it works have not improved. And we're not winning the war on cancer, right?
No,
and we're not talking about food, and we're not talking about supplements. We're not talking about water. We're not talking about exercise. We're not talking about sunshine. So getting back to where I was, though, water. Mm-hmm. We want the person to drink alkalinized, hydrogen-rich water from an Enagic Kangen machine. because we need that person to be alkaline immediately. Dr. Otto Warburg has 2 Nobel Prizes in medicine from the 1930s that show that cancer, essentially, and Seyfried talks about this, the leading researcher in cancer talks about this all the time.
Cancer cannot grow.
He showed it in the 30s. Cancer, nor really any disease, can grow in an alkaline oxygen-rich environment.
Yeah.
So again, we should be concentrating, I think, on being alkaline and oxygen-rich. Now, how do we do that?
Well, the
We
Kangen
take
machine.
the right supplements, we drink the right water, we eat the right foods, we exercise, we sleep, we balance our hormones. It's not rocket science, but it's things that Americans aren't doing anymore, right? They're eating the wrong foods. We're eating processed foods, full of glyphosate, full of atrazine, known cancer causers. We're taking in microplastics everywhere we look. We're being exposed to toxic waters with fluoride and with all these chemicals, chlorine, bromide, all these chemicals that can cause cancer or lead to more cancer.
One of the things I noticed when I started drinking Kangen water was that when you bring it up to your mouth, you don't smell chlorine. And if you drink tap water, you immediately, it smells weird.
It's really hard to drink any other water once you drink Kangen water for a couple of weeks.
And that doesn't just create more alkalinity. It's not just alkaline water, because you can get...
It's antioxidant.
It's got, yes, an antioxidant, but it puts more oxygen into your body.
Well, it does. It increases the oxygen in the cell by 64.9%.
Which is amazing.
Which is amazing. And we talked earlier about colon cancer and rectal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Hiromi Shinya, the leading GI doctor in the world, says that he won't take a patient that doesn't drink Kangen water.
Right.
Very protective of the colon. It is a medical device in Japan, not in America. Again, they live longer than we do. They smoke more than we do. They have less cancers than we do. They have less heart disease than we do. So they're number 1 in the world, by the way, in length of life, and we're 60 or 70 something now, which is tragic. Because when you think about how much money we spend.
Yeah.
And a lot of that money is on chemo and radiation. A lot of it. The number 1 grossing product in America year after year is chemotherapy.
Wow. More so than you said oil and gas is chemo.
Correct. Chemotherapy. And so what is really tragic to me, Janet, and I've seen just massive amounts. I do a lot of cancer consults. Massive amounts of what I'll call young women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer since the debacle of we need these shots for this virus.
Wow, so you're seeing...
Lots of women in their 30s, 40s, just women that you would not typically have seen.
Because they're otherwise healthy, not overweight, active?
Not all of them, are necessarily healthy, but a lot of them are. And they shouldn't have breast cancer, but I'm afraid they made decisions based off what the experts told them to do that led to what we'll call these turbo or higher rates of cancer at younger ages. So we really need to be mindful of being the CEO of our own health. We really need to investigate things before we jump in and we're led by fear instead of research.
And how do we do that?
Well, we do it with things like this podcast, with trying to learn from other
your class.
Qualified people, from coming to the OptiU Summit, doing consults, being on the supplements. This is not that hard.
And you can put the information out there, and then we can decide or filter out and take what we need. That's the thing about it. You're not telling us, believe this. You're saying, here's the study. You decide. Look at it.
Correct. That's what I always try to do. I actually met with a dentist and his wife this week. And we went through some stuff, and they had my blood panel done. And the wife was just shocked that she was diabetic, and nobody had ever told her. Nobody was checking her A1C. Nobody was checking her insulin. She was having all these issues, and I just showed her. I was like, here it is. And I was like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but here's what your results show.
Type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, but here's how you fix it.
Yeah.
And so it's just about educating ourselves and trying to make better decisions. And look, Janet, the real tragedy of this is this doesn't just affect us. This affects our kids, our grandkids, that's what we have to really look at. We are on a path that if we don't make changes, I have no idea what the cancer rates are going to be for my grandkids are 17, 18 months old.
Because it's getting worse.
What is the cancer rate's going to be in that generation?
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse.
Because they are literally being fed poisons daily. and they're exposed to Wi-Fi daily, and they're exposed to plastics daily. And so again, it's not that I'm trying to be negative. It's that there are ways that we can try to mitigate, minimize, reduce the risk of all these things. And we do it, but there's so few of us doing it is the problem.
You have to be proactive.
You have to be.
But you can't be proactive without that knowledge. So
Right.
you have to have this.
You have to empower
understanding.
yourself.
Yeah.
Knowing things and having knowledge is empowering. When you, just like you talked about, you had that moment in that first
that
summit.
aha moment.
That's empowering.
Yeah.
Okay, if I just get my vitamin D level to 80, I can reduce the risk of cancer by 50%. That's so easy, y'all.
Amazing.
That should be every single American. It should be on every single annual blood test. Fasting insulin should be on every single fasting blood test. I mean, it's amazing to me that we don't measure it. We can measure CRP for inflammation. We can measure homocysteine for inflammation. We can look at all these markers, and nobody's looking.
You've got a great blood panel that you suggest, and it basically hits all the different markers, and then you explain what those mean, and you explain what levels are optimal. That's a huge, and powerful class that you do.
I know we're out of time, Janet, but probably at some point we need a part 3, honestly.
All right.
But right now, Foundational 4, vitamin D, 60 to 100, 80 to 100 is optimal. 26 different kinds of cancer treated and prevented with vitamin D levels that are optimal. That's easy. That stuff is easy. And again, with the Foundational 4, I should say it this way. We're going to really help the colon work more efficiently, and we're going to make the body more metabolically efficient with the magnesium and the multi. So we're reducing the risk of these disease processes by doing simple, I'll call them inexpensive supplements.
Compared to the price of everything else.
If your average chemo treatment's over $10,000, you can buy a lot of supplements.
So this can
That's
help.
one chemo treatment.
One chemo treatment.
Not multiple, one.
So you're going to, what I'm hearing through all of this is that you can give people so much hope, but not just hope, but, an action plan.
Yeah.
And it can really change.
Well, Janet, one of the most rewarding things that I do is when somebody has cancer and they're taking treatments or getting ready to take treatments is we put them on, or I suggest, I should say, that they go on the supplement regimen. And what you'll find, and the reason this cancer clinic sends their people to me, is they typically don't lose their hair. They don't need the nausea meds. They don't need the pain meds. We can minimize the side effects, and that does give people hope.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Right. So awesome.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to a part 3 on this one.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.